I've lost count of how many times someone has sent me one of these videos. You know the ones. You know the exact thumbnail. A guy leaning against a row of washing machines, holding a cup of coffee, telling you he makes 10 grand a month while he sleeps. He works 2 hours a week. He retired at 40. I watch them. And every single time, I notice the exact same thing missing. Not just a small detail. Half the entire story. Now I am not going to tell you these businesses don't work. In 40 years of finance, I have seen ordinary people build generational wealth with things exactly like this. A car wash. A self-storage lot. A route of vending machines that nobody else thought twice about. It is absolutely possible, but the version of the story you are being shown online is only the version that survived. And survivors never remember the fall as clearly as they remember standing back up. Before we go deeper, remember, this is just my perspective. It's not financial advice for your specific money. I just want to sit down with you and fill in the blank spaces that keep getting left out of the highlight reel. Let's start with the most dangerous trap of all. Survivorship bias. Nobody makes a YouTube video about the guy who bought the laundromat, spent 8 months bleeding money on a busted commercial water heater, realized he was in over his head, and quietly sold the place at a massive loss. That story doesn't get clicks. That story doesn't sell a $1,000 online course. That guy doesn't make a video titled, "How I Lost My Kid's College Fund." He just goes back to his cubicle on Monday morning and never talks about it again. So you watch video after video of the winners, and you start thinking that success is just what naturally happens when you buy this kind of business. It isn't. Success is what happens when you buy the exact right business, for the exact right price, at the exact right time, and then manage to get a bit of luck on top of it. Think about the lottery. If you only ever heard interviews with the jackpot winners, buying tickets would look like a bulletproof retirement plan. Nobody films the millions of losers because their story is boring. I tried it. It didn't work. I moved on. In business, silence gets mistaken for absence. But the failures are out there. They are just quiet. Then there is the data. The famous 90% success rate. I hear that thrown around a lot by business brokers. Whenever a video throws a suspiciously clean percentage at you, you have to ask, says who? Measured over what period? What exactly counts as success? Does it count a business that is limping along, barely covering its own debt, just because it hasn't technically filed for bankruptcy yet? I call these zombie businesses. They make just enough money to pay the bank, but not enough to pay the owner. You didn't buy a path to financial freedom. You bought yourself a minimum wage job that came with a massive heavy loan attached to your name. But technically, you are part of that 90% success rate. Here is what I see happen to real people. The story in the video always starts with someone unhappy in their corporate job and ends with them totally free on a beach. They always skip the middle. They skip the part where you have to work your old full-time job and run the new business at the exact same time. Sleeping 4 hours a night. Missing family dinners. Sitting awake at 3 a.m. wondering if you just made a mistake that will ruin your family. I knew a young guy who bought a small property management route. For 14 months, his nights and weekends were nothing but spreadsheets, broken toilets, and angry tenants. His wife told me he used to fall asleep at the kitchen table with lease agreements still open in front of him. He aged 5 years in those 14 months. Today when you meet him, he looks like a genius who made one smart decision. The exhaustion is completely gone from his life. It's not part of his success story anymore. But it was real. It was brutal. And it is the mandatory entry fee. Nobody puts the entry fee in the brochure. Now, let's talk about the money. Because this is where good people get badly hurt. The videos love to show you the monthly profit. They love to show you gross revenue. What they almost never show you is the debt sitting heavily underneath it, Clearing $3,000 a month sounds wonderful. Right up until you learn there is a $200,000 seller financing note sitting behind it. At an interest rate that is quietly eating the owner alive. Profit without context isn't financial information. It is just decoration. And what does the word profit even mean in these videos? Is it the money left over after the owner pays themselves a fair hourly wage for their time? Or is it just whatever random cash is left in the checking account at the end of the month? Carelessness with language in this game will cost you everything. Let me say something a little uncomfortable. Passive income in small business is a myth. A lot of what they call passive isn't passive at all. It is just work that has been made invisible. It is not passive. It is delegated. And learning how to delegate takes years of painful mistakes. The owner on YouTube isn't showing you the 2 years they spent learning which shady vendor to avoid. They aren't showing you the pain of hiring managers who steal, or employees who just don't show up on a Sunday morning. By the time the cameras roll, they have already built a reliable team. It looks effortless because the effort is finished. That is not the same thing as being effortless, and remember, the equipment doesn't care about your beautiful spreadsheet. A commercial washing machine breaks down the same week 3 others do. The coin machine gets jammed on a Friday night. The city decides to dig up the water main in front of your car wash, blocking your entrance for 3 straight weeks. These are not rare, once-in-a-lifetime disasters. They are just a regular Tuesday in this line of work. The people who actually succeed have built a massive cash cushion for this exact reality. The people who only watched the video didn't know they were supposed to. The real world doesn't stand still just because your business plan assumed it would. A greedy landlord triples the rent. A massive corporate competitor opens a shiny new location 2 blocks away. A quiet neighborhood slowly changes demographics and your regular customers move away. None of that shows up in a quick snapshot of last month's profit and timing. This is the silent killer, someone who bought a self-storage facility 10 years ago, when land was incredibly cheap and interest rates were at 0%, was operating in a completely different universe. Money was basically free. Today, you are borrowing money at much higher rates. The property costs 3 times as much. You are entering a market that is already crowded with hundreds of other competitors, who all watched the exact same YouTube videos you did. A strategy that worked beautifully in one economic environment can bankrupt you in another. Here is something that took me years of talking to wealthy people to truly understand. The person telling you their story has already forgiven themselves for their mistakes. They have sanded down the rough edges of their own memory. When they tell the story now, it sounds like a calculated, intelligent risk. But I promise you, in year 1, it felt like a terrifying panic attack. That is just how human memory works to protect us. But when you use their smoothed over, polished story as your financial blueprint, you are walking completely blind into the sharp edges. These videos always end on a triumphant note. The music swells. The numbers climb across the screen. The guy drives away in a nice car. But I want you to remember this. Somewhere in that exact same city, someone else tried the exact same thing. They made reasonable decisions. They worked hard. And they still lost it all, not because they were foolish, but because business, like life, always involves a roll of the dice. Their story is just as true. Their story is just as valuable. It just doesn't get a catchy title. I am not telling you to walk away from your dream of owning a business. Like I said, they are the backbone of real wealth. But when you watch these videos, don't just blindly ask how they did it. Ask what isn't in the frame. Ask who else tried this and quietly disappeared. Ask what the word profit is actually hiding. The truth is rarely hidden on purpose. It is just less exciting than a highlight reel, but your life, your future, and your hard-earned money deserve a much fuller picture than a 15-minute video.